And thank you for staying with us throughout the day. This is our wrap-up, and we're going to get in some reactions, some of the key decisions taken by the NPP today at this National Delegates Conference. I know a lot has been said about the expansion of its delegates list, and it will take effect. The first time this huge delegates list will get to decide for the party will be at this presidential primaries next year, end of month, January 2026. But that isn't the only change that was made today. In fact, I listened to Kojo Ponkrumah make the point that they have increased the delegates list by more than 40%, I believe he says. And what they've done is that at various structures, at various levels of the party, they expanded all of it, from polling stations to national executives to even former members of parliament and parliamentary candidates can all now vote in their primaries, and also, I believe, when it comes to the election of national executives. So that is the big headline from the National Delegates Conference tonight. Another big headline tonight is that they have scrapped the Super Delegates Congress. That is a special electoral college that they constitute to shortlist the presidential hopefuls in cases where they have more than 5 of them running for that particular slot. And that was based on the 2007 incident at the University of Ghana, where a huge number of aspirants led to very acrimonious Congress, and they decided then at the time, post that, to reform that constitution and introduce that clause. What they've done tonight is to go back to what used to be. And we'll analyze that for you tonight and get reactions to that. But the other very important decisions also. One of them that will generate a fair bit of controversy is a decision tonight that the NPP is going to be doing what the NDC have been doing for quite some time now, which is the communication director's position will now be an elected one. You know, the NDC did that with the National Communications Officer when Sami Jemfi was elected. The NPP from now henceforth will have that position elected, and the position, the formal designation will be the communications director. He will be elected now. He has a campaign just like all the other national executives and be elected. His deputy will still be appointed. That's another key decision from the conference tonight. And also we know that they also now have passed a resolution which will be written into their constitution to prevent party officers from holding dual positions, dual as in the party position and the government position. So immediately you are appointed into government. If you're holding any of the party positions, you must resign the party position and go and serve and focus on your government position. We've seen that become very controversial in both parties indeed. But the NPP has taken the first bold step of writing it into their constitution tonight. So that decision has been taken by the delegates at this meeting. And another one that is interesting, we talked about it when we started in the morning, myself and Winston, who leads the party and when. It has always been an issue. They resolved it now. Without a shadow of doubt, they written it into their constitution to say that the national chairperson is the leader of the party at all times, whether they are in opposition or they are in government. He is the leader of the party, and I'll get my panel to weigh in on that too. So that is resolved tonight. And then, again, drawing from the history of the NPP, when they're in government and people want to run for the president as on the ticket of the party, we've seen what tends to happen. There is a lot of acrimony. The party has now written it into their constitution that if you are holding on to any appointed position in government, when a party is in government, you must resign that position. Either you're a minister, DC, whatever it is, you must resign that position at least 24 clear months before the next elections. You must resign. And that is clarity that the party, again, has decided to write into their constitution. So basically, those are the major highlights from today's National Delegates Conference. And my guests are joining me in the next hour. We'll unpack a fair bit of this. And I want to start with you, Winston. And I know let's spend a few minutes on this expansion, because that is being spoken about quite extensively. They've decided now to do exactly what we thought will happen, but does this guarantee better outcomes for the NPP going into the 2028 elections?
Well, I mean, when we showed up in the morning, I told you that the challenge with going all card-bearing members is that the NPP would have learned lessons from, the NDC, beg your pardon, even though there are those who made the point that, look, if you want to say all card-bearing members should vote, you should actually indicate by what time you can, you end registration. So if you're not a card-bearing member, say by now, you cannot vote in the presidential elections. And that was the plan, to make sure that you don't experience what the NDC experienced, where some few people showed up and gathered in their rooms and registered a lot of people to go and vote. But of course, the challenge also is that, the monetization of our politics, some believe, would never leave us. And so the fear is that if you say all should vote, all may still demand money. And that becomes a problem. So why don't you go with it? Now, this is where I come from. First of all, the people within the NPP who felt that, and you've had members of parliament who lost their elections indicating that when they went into the polls, people told them that, the people that you shared TVs and cash to, go and look for them to come and campaign for you, because we didn't get anything from you. The belief is that now, if you expand and you have more people, at least you have more people showing up to campaign for you. Evans, I think that we have reached a position as a country where card-bearing members of political parties should be given the chance to vote. Okay? However, in order to be considered to vote, there should always be a cutoff point where it says, if you don't have a party card, if you have not been paying your dues for, say, 3, 4, 5 years, you don't qualify. That would make sure that everybody will go out. So then you would have the true person. But you see, again, and we'll get to the scrapping of the electoral college. Most of the time, we wrongly diagnose problems. And so the initial conversation was, the NDC did it didn't work. Nobody actually went into it to say, why didn't the NDC system work? Because even close to the elections, the NDC was still registering people. And people were complaining that they couldn't be registered, but they were still continuing. So I would have felt that the NPP would have taken that route. Because look, long before the NDC went that route, Jacob Echebilamte had indicated that the NPP had expanded its electoral college and would be the first to actually think of having every card-bearing member of the party vote. That unfortunately didn't happen. The NDC tried it in 2015 and they scrapped it in 2017. And so the NPP has done that. That notwithstanding, you have more people who vote. They call it the limited expansion. But I tell you what, Evans, that does not actually deal with the monetization problem. Will be with the
Kujo Nkrumah, who is a member of the committee that put this together, I aggregated the proposals, made the point that their ultimate objective is to get to a point where they'll have one party member, one person, one vote across the party if you are in good standing, right? So he's clearly set the ultimate goal, but he says that they are not in a position yet logistically to make that happen for now. They may get there. Musa Dankwa, you obviously have been doing a lot of work in talking to NPP supporters as part of your polling for various reasons. Do you get a sense that it's something that those who are sympathetic to the party, not necessarily delegates or holding polling station positions, etc., would want to have a say in deciding who leads the party?
I don't want to speculate because we have not done specific poll on that issue. But any person who is a true lover of a party would like to have a say in who the party elects. I don't think that they will say they won't take part. But probably what may be a bit of challenge will be the financial commitment they may have to make in order to qualify them to vote. And that's where you see those who are genuinely party loyalists. They would commit resources in order to get a party in the position where they want to see it. But I believe that, as Winston said, look, I believe if you expand the electoral college to include card-bearing members in good standing, with a cut-off period, then you address the problem the NDC faced during their time. We should get to a point where we have this. Now, when you do have this, you tend to broaden the people who select the flag bearer. And that tends to reflect the actual demography of the people who would eventually make decisions in the end. The smaller the group, the more dispersed the views of the wider public is with the clique.
It's just like any research sampling, right? It has to be representative of the population.
Absolutely.
So the bigger it is, the closer it gets to representing what will happen in the national election.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you see, in certain regions, for example, where a region is a swing region, you may say that, I don't know whether Dr. Sasadi was saying earlier on, like they do in the United States, where it's a swing state, you allow independent people to also vote.
Well, the US
election.
Yeah. So if it's a swing region, then independents voters can say, okay, let's allow them because they can tell us how to vote in the end.
Yeah.
But in the regions where it is clear blue and clear green, it's your party guys who should normally be. So we could try something and in the end have a refined solution that will suit our needs.
Exactly. In Ghana, the independents will be very, very difficult to fish them. Although I see in your polling, you still have in the independents.
Yeah, they are floating voters. Look, people are very frank. You see, a lot has changed in the way we see elections in this country. In the past, it was difficult to ask someone which party you belong to or you vote for. They don't tell you. Now, openly they tell you. It's much easier. And those who say, I won't tell you, that number is shrinking.
I mean, Prof, what do you stand on this expansion?
Well, I think that as our democracy begins to evolve and we get advanced in our democracy, it is important that we also have processes and changes that reflect this advancement of the democracy. The political parties are foundational or fundamental to the success of our democracy. And in as much as the more intra-party democratic politics that is available in the political parties, or the more there is democracy, internal democracy in our political parties, the better for the success of our democracy. And so, I mean, the most purest form of a democracy that you would expect is the one that reflects the original ideals of democracy, which is a government of the people, by the people and for the people, or the Athenian version of democracy where everybody meets in the city center. When democracy started in the Greco-Roman system, where everybody within the polity was involved in the making of decisions, or his views were heard in the making of decisions or in the selection of leaders. And so the more it tilts towards that purist system, the better for us. And so, there are so many advantages in making sure that the kind of democracy we have, the kind of decisions we have, the kind of leaders that we have are a reflection to a larger extent or as much as possible of the will of the people on the ground. And so any effort that, it promotes that should be welcome. At the end of the day, it is advantageous for the political parties themselves. Because when these foundational measures are taken, you are sure that some of the most fundamental aspects of democracy are fulfilled. When party leaders or people who put themselves up for election have, whether executives or whatever, have to go and appeal to a wider swath of the people in the party or the grassroots, it has a lot of advantages. It enables them, the accountability measures are great. It enables them to hear from the people on the ground. The assessment and the review of their performance is more expanded. And it helps a lot more voices to be held, to be heard in terms of representation. But it also makes sure that the people who are elected are a reflection of those on the ground. And the advantage is that when this is extended to the presidentials or to national elections, the people that they present at the national level would be as close as possible to the will of the people or winning national elections, because sometimes you find people who are good for a political party or who are good for internal party mechanisms but may not be that great when it comes to the national level. Yeah. So I think that the more some of these measures are put in place, the better for the parties themselves as it fulfills that representational element or principle of selection when it comes to politics.
And closely linked to that is a decision they've taken tonight to abolish the special electoral college, what we call the super delegates. And Musa Dankwa, you have done polling about what are the most likely aspirants, if you like, for the party. At the last count, how many do you have? Because Kwabena Japan, you have Kennedy Japan, you have Bawumia, you have Aduchum,
Brian Achampong.
you have Brian Champon. Is a Dynamo in there?
A Dynamo is still in there.
So that's 6.
And then we haven't heard from him yet, Patrick Boama.
Okay, he's also been speaking, but he hasn't confirmed.
He hasn't confirmed
So far, at least we have 6.
Yeah.
If we cross 5, then the special electoral college would have been activated to now vote and shrink that number down. But on the back of what has happened today, that is no more.
Yeah.
Consider you've been polling on that. I mean, is this a good move?
I think it's a good move. It takes the notion away from the notion that, the elite, the cream of the cream, will go and pick few people that they are quite jelly with, and the rest will not make it through. I think it's a very good move. It's very fair and very democratic in this sense. And I think they would allow, or they will bring in a runoff in a case where there is no outright winner. So that solved those issues. I believe that thing was in the bad taste.
I mean, Winston, you were in Legon in 2007 when...
I was at the Trade Fair Center in 2009, rather.
No, I'm actually talking about the reason why we had 2009.
I wasn't there, but
you weren't there. Okay, I was there. And on the back of that election, the troubles that we all saw the party now go to try and mend the cracks. Then came 2009 when they did this change to try and solve the problem. So you don't want all these, you have to open the floodgates, like 1,000 people go and run for the president. So shrinking. So they came up with this very creative way of doing it. Today, they said they're going back to it. Is that a good thing?
You know why, first of all, the problem was wrongly diagnosed? I'll tell you. By 2009, the party had actually decentralized and so had actually cancelled that Legon system. You weren't going to have the party gather at one place again because from 2010, the party was voting in the constituencies. So you didn't have the situation where you had 17 people in one room trying to speak to delegates and resulting in a fight, as happened in 2007.
Yeah.
And that's why I say that, that whole thing was wrongly diagnosed. The other point is that to say, because there are a lot of people, there'll be no unity. Okay, let's say 10 people decide to contest, like it happened in the last primary. Now, you bring in constituency chairman and regional executive committee members and others to vote and reduce the number to 5. Now, before it gets to the 5, what would they be doing? Are they not campaigning? They're going around campaigning. So the very things you are trying to prevent will still be there. Okay? Part of the problem in 2007, 2008, 2009. Now, it was a period where the NPP had a feeling that they were doing very well. So many people felt that if I could win the party's flag bearership, I was going to be president. And you saw it. And Addo almost crossed it. So a lot of people showed up wanting to be president. And at every point in time in an election, there are people who would show up wanting to be president, not because they believe they would win, but because they believe that they have ambition, and so may nurse it. What can happen in that situation is that it's either you nurse your ambition or you kill your ambition. So depending on how you run your campaign and the circumstances around the election, you either would nurse or you will kill your ambition and you can never show up again. My point is that they got it wrong in 2009, and it's good that today they've realized, because no matter what you do, and see, part of even the problem is that the Special Delegates Conference, okay, where there are a lot of machinations in place to actually send a signal, has created problems in the past even for the party. So all the party can do is go ahead, go and contest. And then if you win, fine. If you don't, you come back. I mean, in other jurisdictions, you've seen 17 people contesting. It doesn't mean that there's a problem.
I mean, but the flip side, Prof, is that the last time this was the use was the last in 2023 when they had 10 people, right? Then they shortlisted to 5. A lot of them come to waste everybody's time, and then you put them all. They'll campaign. You go to this, national primary elections, and the party spends quite a bit of money. The party believes is less fractured. So just save the men from the boys.
Right.
and let the real contenders, those who really, if they win, can help the party possibly either retain power or recapture it, be the only ones who really get the considered by the bigger delegates. What they've done now is to go back, right? That leaves, who knows, they may probably have 20 people.
Right.
Because people feel it's an opportunity that because of how bad the defeat was, there is a target on the back of Bawumia, obviously, because people see he's the outright favorite because he's the most marketed. This may invite a lot more people into the race. The NDC actually had a case where this gentleman joined who people actually accused at one point being what wasn't mentally sound, right? So this was a mechanism to sift. Right. They're taking that away. Are they exposing themselves to the law of unintended consequences?
Well, thank you very much, Vance. I don't think so. I've long disagreed with the whole electoral college thing for different reasons, although I understand what Winston is saying. When that thing came up in the first place, I found it as very limiting, very constricting, because you cannot artificially control the process. In the US, Democrats have 10, 12 people contesting. The heavens don't fall down. The last time Republicans, they had about 17 people. Nothing happened. They went through the process. The idea is that in a democracy, you don't constrict, you rather expand. You rather allow more people to take part, as many people as possible to take part in the process. Those who arguments are about it being a beauty pageant, that it was going to lead to division, that it was going to expose the party, and that just anybody at all can take part in it. That is going to happen anyway. Even if there were just 5 people contesting, those divisions, those attacks, those jabs, that fear, that visceral fear that, we know it down, otherwise people are going to tear each other apart and the party is going to, there'll be nothing. It's going to happen anyway, even if there were just 2 people contesting, because those factionalisms are always there. So, I mean, it was not a popular opinion at the time. I think I even wrote about it. It was not a popular opinion at the time. But well, fast forward, I mean, they've had to go back again. And I think it's good, because you do not want in a democracy to give a certain idea that there are certain elite, selected, special people in a certain back room, smoke-filled room, cutting deals.
They're special. Even the name is implied.
Exactly. Special
delegates. Special than the rest of the party.
Can you imagine? Even the name signifies that. And that is not a single signal you want to show in a democracy as much as possible. So it's good that they've expanded it. Let whoever wants to do that come and prove themselves. It gives wider participation. The grassroots are able to have that feeling of belonging. You see, one of the things that does not bother well for a party, and when these things happen, sometimes since 2012, I've actually gone to the ground and done snap interviews sometimes, right from 2012, the NDC rally here at Obrasport, NPP Congress, we do snap elections and polls. One of the major problems that we found in our research today was that one of the biggest problems that the NPP is facing is that disconnection between the elite at the top and then the people at the ground, right? And I know he's laughing because the polls have shown that. So if to merge, like there's a certain palpable disconnect. Yes, between them at the top and the grassroots. So to alienate that or to solve that, you shouldn't, the tone, the signal that you give should as much as possible obliterate that kind of feeling. And so the more the people feel that they own the party, the more they feel that they've made a decision, the more they feel that they own the process, whether it's direct or indirect, in any way possible, the more they have that feeling, the more they are likely to be committed, the more they are likely to be less apathetic, because the second problem we found today in the research was not the grab, but the apathy. If they feel that, hey, you know what, this does not reflect our view, some people want to sit somewhere, they're going to sit back. And that is one of the problems that they faced. So I think that this is good, not just for the party, but for democracy. And it helps other people the more you go out there. I've covered primary elections and party conventions, both in Ghana and in the United States, spanning a large period. Last year, I was I was in Boston doing the same thing. The more you advertise your party, the more you advertise your candidates, the more you advertise the issues, the more you give the opportunity for debate, the more you give the opportunity for contribution, contestations, and all of that, the more people feel a part of the process and they feel a part of the democracy, and the more they are invested in it. And the more it pushes us as closer to the idea of representative democracy in its most purest form. So I think this changes pushes us as close as possible to that. And if we want to remain the exemplary democracy that we think we are, those reforms need to start at the party level.
Okay, Winston.
Look, I even think that if the NPP wants to, sieve the numbers, if I could put it that way, they can go the US way. Start regional elections, as in, boom. Look, if you go and you get
X percentage,
well, you get out. Nobody will force you. So sometimes, and I think that political parties should start that. Okay, let's run the presidential campaign this way. We'll start it between, say, in the next 2 months, for instance, maybe 2 months. In 2 months, we'll do it. Masa, if you go to a region and somebody is getting 50% and you're getting 1%, nobody would advise you to step down. The people who will start stepping down, and it will get to a point where the party could be left just 2. And that actually saves you, all that you seek to do. So instead of saying, oh, there's a problem, I think it's about time the political parties considered this. I like the US system, you start and realize that I'm fat. Then you step down. You step down because you realize you're not going to win. That's the way to go about it. If you want to reduce the numbers, go about it that way. What that actually does is that it gives your party a chance to connect to its base, because the whole party machinery is going to be in the region. They'll be campaigning in the region, and once they campaign, all the bigwigs are there for the period. The debates will be held in the region. People can ask them questions. The television stations will broadcast it. It actually, puts the spotlight on the political party.
In other words, you're going to have 16 elections.
Yes.
But
democracy is cheap.
But I know, but that is going to sort of widen a problem that we're trying to shrink, which is extended campaign period, more money spent as a result of that, because eventually you will have your convention.
No, listen.
Which is equivalent to your central location for election.
That is where you say that in order to be a decision maker, you should be a party member in good standing. The party members in good standing would have been paying there's a cutoff point. If you're not registered by that time.
But that is not addressing the concern, which will be you're going to have a longer campaign period. You're going to have more money spent at the time when we're trying to reduce the influence of money in our politics. People are going to spend a lot of money. On the regional basis.
No, you wouldn't spend a lot of money. In fact, what you would do is that once it is clear you're winning, you'd have more donors. You even have more donors. Why? Our political party laws are very simple. People can donate to you. Make that very clear that I got money from here and here. You go and declare. The point is that if we do that as a country, what you would see is that, so the NPP wants to elect their flag bearer on the 31st of January. What the party could do is to say, if they had adopted that, is to say, we go for the first regional election in November. You go for the first one in November. Or maybe you decide you want to do 2 at a time, 2 regions at a time. My brother, I tell you one thing. The moment, after the first regional election, a lot of people will drop up. Because then the field becomes clear.
Yeah, this is Ghana, though. People will still stay in the race even when they're getting...
they become irrelevant.
There are people who we know will pick up forms to run in the primaries, who have been running for the last 3 primaries and are getting less than 1%, and they're still going to run. This is Ghana. I know you support that point. You support his suggestion.
It's a novelty that we shouldn't close the door on any option we can experiment with. But I think, you see, some of the contestants have no idea what they will get in the election.
Exactly.
Someone like a dynamo.
Those are notorious serial contestants.
Exactly. Now, someone like that will not drop out because he got 1% in the regional election.
Others who may have a different perception of what they think they might perform, and that they would spend hugely thinking that they would do well, only to flop. And that would be a huge investment lost. Once you adopt this approach, they can begin to assess their investment, whether it's worth putting more money or cut their losses. And this opportunity It's not given to you when everybody is gathered in one place, in one big bang event, and then realize that, hey, I'm fat. Then you have lost money. And they will finish you quarter in terms of financing. By the time you realize you will never be able to recover as a politician. So look, we should not discount any option. I mean, we should be able to refine and see what can best work for us in terms of even the duration. You're saying that we'll be in perpetual campaign season. You could just shrink it to maybe four months. And in 4 months, we do 4 regions here, 4 regions, we are done. Yeah. And we could even turn that into, let's say, electoral college system. If you win the northern region, it has so many electoral votes based on people who vote there. You can do that system, and then you won here. Okay, this is the number that you have. And by the time we get to the third, you realize that you are out of the race because the numbers you have gotten will not be sufficient for you to go anywhere. And then people begin to kind of coalesce around the eventual winner much earlier through the process.
Yeah, you agree with this because you understand the US system very well. You've written books about it. Would it work in the Ghanaian context?
Well, I mean, in as much as I understand the importance or the advantages, pushing us as closely as possible to a very pure democracy, there are certain challenges with it. Because the thing is, the start is there, and we saw the NDC do that. Eventually they reverted back. They did to our delegate system. Where, correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, they reverted back. So, I mean, in as much as we want to push ourselves...
But they didn't try, it as in... I mean, starting from region...
Oh, no, I don't know. I just mean the general one. The general one.
Because, but you see, Prof, the point I was making earlier about the general one, and that's why I bring in good standing.
Right.
Because in the NDC's case, we all saw how it happened. And, I mean, we're all reporting at the time, and consistently we heard NDC members saying, we can't even get the party forms. So somebody brings the party forms and goes to stay in his room and is sharing it. Now, what that does is that it actually gets the base angry because they can't get the party form. And I have made the point here, Evans, I made the point in the morning. I met somebody who's an NPP delegate. I asked her, how did you become a delegate? Oh, Name Papaya chairman in George Romidin. Watch this. There are people who are delegates, and Musa Dankwa, you know this.
We know.
There are people who are delegates of the NPP who were not voted for at the polling station. What happens is that when they go and meet, some people just write names and say, you are this, you are that, you are that. And then they move on. Look, so that in itself is a problem.
Yeah, so let me just conclude what I was saying. So in order to curb that, right, I mean, the idea is to move towards a more pluralistic system, a more representative, a more inclusive rather than exclusive system. That is true. And I would have wished that whatever problems or challenges that the NDC faced, instead of totally abolishing it, well, I'm not saying I would have wished, but one of the things that could have happened was to see whether they could address that rather than abolishing it, those challenges. You get what I mean? But anyway, going back to the specifics of what you were saying, the biggest, disadvantage of that system is that in the US itself, there are complaints that people are pushed out of the race way too early. And it does not allow other members in other regions, in our case, or in other states, to be able to air their views. Can you imagine that in a country made up of over 300 million people, over 50 states, which is like an amalgamation, some of them qualifying to be a country on its own, by the third primary or fourth primary, it's almost like people are falling out. We already know who's going to go. The thing has been winnowed out. What about the rest of the country? And there's diversity. There's ethnic diversity. There is racial diversity. There's religious diversity.
Even more so in a context like ours.
Even more so in our context, which is even more the fissures, the ethnic, divisions or diversity is even bigger. And so
because, for example, if you start in a place like Ashanti region, you have a trouble. You're in trouble because it's a huge base of the party. If they say vote first, even deciding which region votes first,
another problem
will be a big problem.
Thank you.
Right?
Exactly. So all politics is local. The issues that happen in the Volta region may not necessarily be the same issues of concern for people in, in Bono region or in Upper East or Upper West. And so to winnow the process down too early and prevent the outcome of the election from being a representation of the entirety of the country also has its disadvantages. And so that's what I would say with that. But if we move towards getting as many people to participate in it as much as possible, in making sure, because it's very beautiful that you go on the ground. I remember the last primary that I covered. You know, what it does is that it makes people more involved in our democracy. You see people going out there, parents, fathers, the city council, they go there to air their views. Because now, the way politics is, it's almost like there is a certain disconnect. It's like, oh, it's their stuff. These are the politicians doing their things. The ordinary voter does not really get involved until probably it's getting to election time. They think that elections or politics does not reap certain dividends for the ordinary people, and that it is a place for some people to go out there and to go make money. So the attachment to the electoral process does not happen until much later during elections. And even that, some people say we want to stay behind. And so that's why when you look at the voter turnout, sometimes it is low. And so to make sure that the democracy is as involving, as participatory, and that people are not observers or just citizens, some of these processes, the primary processes and the local election, the constituency involvement, allow the democracy to be to be a more expansive one, and allow people to feel that the outcomes of democracy, even at the local level, when it comes to devolution and decentralization, are connected to the vote that they cast.
Okay.
And that is why an expansion of the voting system is always very good, you know, because you have everybody really interested in the process, and that's beautiful. But we should also be careful not to, broadly transpose from other places here, because they do have their inherent disadvantages, which we may not even be able to contain.
And also, I was making the point, I'll come to you, Winston, just a brief point on that. I was making the point about campaign financing. You have the US that has very well settled, strongly enforced regime for campaign financing and disclosures. And you dare not violate that. We don't have that here. So when you extend the primary process from regional basis up until all 16 regions, if you may, that obviously would expand the length of time that you will have for campaign. There will be more money spent. And you made the point, rightly so, that those with the money bags will begin to spot who to put their money, who to go and sponsor, right? Because you're making it easier for them now to grab because they believe the person has the chance to win. That has significant challenges in the country, in an economy, in the jurisdiction where our campaign financing laws are pretty weak. Even those we have, we are not enforcing.
Evans, I'm going to use, there's a proverb in Akan, and this is not to discriminate against anybody. I'm just repeating the proverb for purposes of analysis. They say, you see, it means compare yourself to the best. So when it comes to our democracy, let's compare to the best.
But you also must understand the dynamics, the local dynamics
of course,
in the US for quite different.
This is my disagreement with Prof briefly is the fact that I agree that disadvantage that the US have talked about. But you see, in a Republican case, you see, for instance, some of the states, when you get all the votes, for instance, that's a problem. We can learn from it and say, no, the percentage that you get will go a long way into shaping it. So you will see that, oh boy, I'm not getting the numbers. So let me step down. So if you think that you can go the long haul, if you still think that based on what you're seeing, you're likely to make it, you can go. But I tell you that there are people who probably will look at it and say by the time it hits half, they know that, look, based on the number of delegates left, I just don't have it. So let me step aside. Then he will step aside. There are those who will be stubborn because we've seen Adanimo consistently showing up. We've seen, others would have also shown up all the time. I think that, I just say this, I spoke to Dr. Edward Mahama one day and I asked him, why do you always show up when your votes have been reducing? He says, he thinks that he shapes the discourse whenever he gets involved. And so he's happy that he talked about school feeding long ago. It found itself someday in the NPP's listing. So he will just believe that he shows up to shape the discourse. Maybe others are doing the same. But if we do it that way, where in this case, all the percentage that you get would go a long way in deciding if by, say, the time it gets to half, you are 2%, and you know that, oh boy, I won't get there. You drop.
Okay. And I know you have something to say, yes?
Yes. What I want to say too is that, look, it is hard time we begin to work with data. I believe that in the past we have not had a polling organization that does regular polling to let people who have aspirations to assess their potential performance. Now, once the polling numbers are coming, in fact, in the US, to even take part in the debate, they say that you must have an average of, let's say, X percentage of national support to qualify to be on the platform. So they aggregate the polling that has come through over the past 6 months and say, hey, you are 5%. You're not qualified to be on the platform to debate. So we need to encourage more established polling organizations to come and help and expand the polling sector and let people see that this is science. It's no longer a voodoo thing. and let them use data to decide whether it's worth putting money in or should I find an alliance with somebody and go with that person. I think we should be moving towards data and science rather than just going in with expectations, no guidance, and only realize that you spend 20 million Ghana cedis.
Final question on this, and I will go to the other key decisions. This primarily, the first time, and they give it, the first time this will be implemented will be in the 31st January primary, 2026. Which of the aspirants now, and then to you first, which of the aspirants now will benefit the most from this change?
I think it's the change.
Yeah, I mean the change, two changes.
No,
one is the expansion, and then two is the scrapping of the special delegates.
Okay, let me ask, will the expansion happen before the election of the presidential candidate?
Yeah, so the expanded delegates will vote.
Oh,
next year.
Goodness.
Some of them would vote.
Okay.
Some of them would vote. Yeah. Others would not vote.
Who are those who are not going to vote?
So when it comes to the polling station executive, because their tenure ends in March,
so they're still
in office.
Okay.
But when it comes to the former ones that have been added to it, they're already former.
Okay.
So they can vote. But the party is not going to organize another
polling station
elections. Because
but whatever it is, a larger delegates number will vote in the primary.
Yeah.
So back to the question.
Okay.
With that in mind, which of the aspirants stands to benefit the most?
About 90% to 95% of the decisions are made at the poll by the polling station executives. They are the ones who decide who become the flag bearer. There are about 210 or 215,000 people currently, of which about 95,000 are the polling station. So if the effect is not going to happen at that polling station level, it means the current system would favor Dr. Bawumia.
No, the current as in before the changes to the...
Yeah, before the changes.
No, but I'm asking the question about now they have changed it. So
but are you saying that they've changed it?
No.
But the actual increase in the number...
They'll increase.
They'll increase.
Because now they've other former...
Constituency
executives and all that. So former MPs have been added to it.
See, those people really will not change the core sentiment of the grassroots. Remember, the very basic grassroots, they are the ones who are mostly disgruntled. Now, if you expand that particular one to allow them to vote, then Bawumia will be in trouble.
Say that again.
If you expand the polling station executives and allow them to vote in that January, Bawumia will be in trouble.
They are not voting.
So they are not voting. So what you're saying in effect is, because the polling station, the expanded list now, because they've actually expanded the number of polling station executives at all the levels.
Yes.
They've expanded it now.
Yes.
So it's going to increase. Because that is not going to be implemented until after, then Bawumia will have it easy. The expansion will favor him.
Yes.
The expansion will favor him.
Because
there'll be more former members of parliament who are now going to vote.
Which are function of government.
Candidates, former will also be voting now. You see this structure now as a span.
That group normally favors the what do you call them?
The establishment.
Yes.
The establishment candidates.
Yes. The rebels are the ones at the very grassroots level.
Winston.
Yeah, I mean, well...
I know it's one of those questions that is pretty difficult to sort of quantify, but we can guess.
Yes, you can guess. And it depends. I put it this way. It depends. As we speak now, Musa Dankwa is here. This has just come up. So subsequently, he will go and do the polling and come back.
And now he will have to now include the expanded list in your population.
Yeah. Now, true?
No, you can do that. But, I mean, what we do is that if their expansion would not disproportionately reduce the size of the polling station executives, you can still rely on those guys, and get the results.
Yeah. Now, you'd have to, first of all, so who are the former executives that are going to vote? As we speak, I do not have an idea who they are.
How far back?
I mean, some of them go way back.
I mean, but former is former. Once you're alive and you're a former,
I don't know. So
you get to vote.
I'm saying you don't know where they
As the identities and
So, if we knew them, we probably would look at them and say, okay, this person may likely do this, may likely do that. Then I would do my, it would be a qualitative thing that I would do here. I'll sit here and just look at it, and based on my understanding of them, he would go and do his, go and do his polling and come back to us. But whatever it is, look, anybody who leads a political party into an election is the man to beat in the next primary. I mean, that's settled. Okay, so it cannot be the case. And look, I'll tell you one thing. There's a school of thought. There's always that conversation about Kufuor in 1996 beating Dubois. There are those who also argue that but for the disqualification of Kwame Pianim, would have been tough for Kufuor. There are those who believe that his disqualification played to Kufuor's advantage, resulting in the victory that Kufuor had. Well, that's a conversation that I've been had before. But whatever the situation was also, post-1996 into 2000, how Kufuor conducted himself made sure that he came back again. So a lot of things will play. But I say that every person who leads a party into the next election is the man to beat. Yes, Dr. Bawumia is not an Akufo-Addo. I've said this before.
So you're saying, bottom line, because my question was direct.
Bawumia is still the man to beat.
No, but that's not my question. My question is, so now this current structure that they have approved that will elect the next primary, you're siding with this point, that it will still favor Bawumia.
I have told you that unless I know the people in there, you understand? As we speak, I don't know them.
Yeah, but then it doesn't address the question, right? Because the question so you're saying that, that is a given.
I've answered your question.
But the structure has changed.
So even if I've said no, it would have still been an answer. So I've answered your question.
So who benefits more from this expanded delegates list?
Look, when it comes to the former members of parliament, based on what I know, I'd say Bawumia would benefit. I do not know about the former concerned executives and others. I cannot say. Okay, if the endorsement that the former MMDCs had gave is anything, you can say that's the point. But the other executives, former executives, I don't have the data on them, so I will not be able to tell when it comes to that one.
Okay, you want to chip in? Would you think benefits more? What is this panelist?
I mean, I don't like making declarative statements, but and when it comes to politics, you never say never. And so for me, I think that if you're a political candidate, as much as possible, what you want to do is to make sure that the race towards you getting the position of leadership of your party, you are accepted widely within the party. Yes, you may not win every vote, but if you want the campaign to be people to sign on to the campaign, there should be that feeling that it was an election, or the outcome of the election was a very fair process. That the outcome of the election, people were not were not unfairly taken out of the process, and that everybody who has the chance to vote in the election had the opportunity to do so. If that is what these new changes present, then I do think that it is the responsibility of the various candidates to go out there and make sure that they are appealing to whatever constituents that they have. If you restrict yourself and concern yourself with the party process and kind of go through a process where it's like okay, these people, this new system benefits this person and does not benefit that person. You see, what happens at the end of the day is that you come out of the primary and there are still people who feel disgruntled. There are still people who feel that the process was not expansive enough. And one of the things that, again, we go out there on the ground and do research, one of the narratives that I'm beginning to hear is that the party, or actually in the immediate aftermath of the 2024 elections, one of the things that we found when we did the post-election analysis was that there was a certain feeling that people felt that the process of selection was very limited. So all that I would say is that if the party wants to make sure that everybody signs on to this after the convention, after each election, then nobody should feel, the wide swath of the party shouldn't feel alienated.
Yeah, I mean, so far the reactions we've got,
do you get it?
Supposes that almost all the aspirants believe that this helps them. If you look at the polling station executives, they have now adopted a resolution and they write into their constitution to increase the number from 5 to 7. And all of them will be elected. And from the chairperson, secretary, organizer, women's organizer, youth organizer, communications officer, electoral affairs officer, all of them will be elected. So from 5 to 7. So that increases the number. Musa Danko's point is that if this was to take effect in the January primary, then Baumel would have taken a bit of a hit there. But I mean, as it stands now, the additional 2 will have to be elected. But because they are doing the top down, they will have to, the status quo will still, apply. That was the biggest chunk of increase you find in this latest move by the party to amend this.
Yeah, normatively speaking,
delegates list.
That would be the expectation. But let me just sound a word of caution that this party, the party is no more than Akufo-Addo's party. It is no more Kufuor's party. The party is in the process of finding a new identity. New factions, new cleavages are being formed. And so it is not a given that people who were former appointees or former officials would necessarily cling towards that. In fact, we are beginning to see some who are actually quote-unquote rebelling or changing alliances and all of that. And so whilst the normative expectation is that, yes, the establishment vote will go there, it is not a complete given. And so I would say that each candidate should go out there and work very hard and make sure that they don't get any surprises. Because once a few elites or a few opinion leaders begin to shift, it makes people feel free to also, feel that, well, I don't know any allegiance here or there, and then fissures are changed. So don't be surprised. Don't be surprised. And I think some of the polling has shown it, that there's to some extent, there is a certain freeing of certain former officials as well. So I think that the candidates should be cognizant of that. But what I would, commend the party for doing is that I do think that the early election of the candidate, although it was not an outcome of today, is a very big conversation. I do think that would allow the party to coalesce back together. It will allow them the bickering, the antagonism, the divisions that are likely to perpetuate if this goes on for a long time. They are likely to end that or, prevent themselves from digging into a deeper hole. And so the earlier they have that and close ranks and come together to do what political parties are supposed to do, which is not just having internal fight, but also being a very plausible alternative to the existing government in terms of policies, in terms of holding them accountable, in terms of making sure that they are preferring alternative policies for the nation. That business, they will get on to it very quick and fast. You can only throw a pity party for as long. The wailing and the crying, it is enough of it. I think they have to move on. The election is over. They have to come together, move on, and see how best they can close ranks and be a very plausible and credible opposition.
And Wingsing, to another major decision tonight, which is around the national chairperson. The national chairperson now, after today's resolution, which was adopted, shall be the leader of the party at all times, whether they are in a position or they're in government. But instructively, he shall also chair the campaign committee, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
In the past, I believe the presidential candidate sort of appoints who the committee chair is.
Yeah.
But they've now adopted a resolution that imposes whoever the chairperson is as the chair of the campaign committee for the party and for the candidate. What do you make of that?
I think it's the way to go. Now, the bit about the national chairman, and earlier we're having the conversation about the NPP seem to have been lost in this whole president leader, flag bearer leader, because since its formation, the national chairman has been the leader. There were attempts in the past to have the president be the leader. Dan Botry makes the point that he fought, when that idea was mooted during the Akufo administration. Even under President Akufo-Addo, people still suggested that. And I remember having a conversation with Dan Botry, and he said, the first thing he did was to call Akufo-Addo and said, you will not let, you know what, I would not let this stand. Because you and I both fought it during the era of J. Akufo. You wouldn't be leader of this party here. And Akufo-Addo said, I agree. And remember when we had that conversation, Akufo-Addo said, oh no, at the party's conference, he said, I am not in support of it. I don't want to be the leader of the party. So it's good that the parties clarified that, because in the last election, two of them kept referring to Bawumia as the leader of the party when he wasn't the leader of the party, per the NPP's own way of doing things. Also, if you realize, the NDC has a system where the party chairman is the chairman of the campaign. Check it.
Let me clarify. I just pulled up the exact wording of the clause that was adopted. It says that the national chairperson shall chair the party's campaign advisory committee. So this is the advisory committee, so not the campaign committee itself.
What actually happens is that within the NDC, you realize that Professor Joshua Alabi was the chairman was the campaign manager for the presidential campaign. But Asidu Nketia was the chairman of the NDC's campaign. So the president can have his campaign manager. So the president has his campaign manager. But the chairman of the party's whole campaign is the party's chairman. So it's the advisory committee. And that's important because the chairman must play a major role. Now, this is what I see the NPP trying to do. And it's actually part of the reason they rejected the president's position on the steering committee. The NPP wants to make it very clear that even if we are in government, the party is different from the government. Look, Dan Botry would say part of the problems he had was that his belief was that the party is different from the government. And at all times, the party is the one that engages in propaganda. And I go for the Ghanaian way of propaganda. The professor is here. The party is what engages in the Ghanaian version of propaganda and not persons who are in government. So I see the NPP trying to say, look, this is the party. The party brings you into office. And at all points in time, even though you are in office, you cannot cross into the party. And the party would still be the one to advise you on what to be done, because it is the party that brings you into office.
Yeah, and also we've seen how absolute Akufo-Addo's control of both party and, if you like, his own government was. He had absolute control. And there are many people who say the party is where it is tonight, trying now to reset, recapture power because of the absolute power Akufo-Addo had, and that if you dissented, you are a goner. And it did start with 2015 all the way to 2016, where the chairman and the secretary were let go, and then we saw the subsequent manifestations of the various leadership that came into being. Do you think this addresses a problem where you have, Dankwa to you now, when you have the national chairman, the leader at all times, if you have a very strong leader, again, emerge, like Akufo-Addo, who wants absolute power. Akufo-Addo is one of those leaders who want absolute power. Don't you see the potential conflict there, where he is the president, and yet he's not a leader of the party, and that the chairperson is?
I think this is to address the problem where you have one leader taking absolute power and control over both the country and the party. And if you're not lucky to have somebody who is reasonable, then you're going to be in big trouble. And I think those changes that they made today probably was after reflecting what has happened in the past 8 years. And they felt we need to cure this before we have somebody who is as powerful as Nana Addo's character. And I think this is looking forward into the future to address that. And it's always good to have a party chairman leading the party, and then the president also leading the country.
But you must have a very strong national chairman.
Look, yes,
the NPP
absolutely.
is not blessed with that now. No. By the opposition, so fine.
So by clarifying this, it means that any person they want to put in as a chairman must have the gravitas, the backbone to deal with any person in the future. So they'll be mindful who they elect as a chairman.
Yeah.
Evans, before he comes in, quick clarification. So the NDC is actually the general secretary, who's the chairman of the campaign, as the CEO of the party, is the general secretary. and not the national chairman. I mean, just by way of clarification.
So that is one of the very fundamental changes the NPP had done tonight at this National Delegates Conference that just ended a short while ago. And if you're just joining us, it will obviously have ramifications for the party going further. And Musa Danko makes the point. It means that you cannot have a weak national chairman.
No.
Especially when the party is in government. You have the president who would obviously, and those close Akufo-Addo will tell you that he wanted to have a say in who becomes the party's general secretary, national. He wanted to have a say, and we all know that when you're in power and in government, the presidents want to influence that process. They want to influence the outcome of the national elections, and then you have a chairman who then is a leader, and then you have a president who then disagree. That chairman must be very, very strong.
Yes.
And that obviously raises questions about the current chairman that they have, who obviously on health grounds was not seen today. But you have a comment on that before I move to the other big decisions?
Yes, what I was going to say was that, you see, it's very important how they manage that relationship. Because if you look historically, whenever there has been a fissure or a contestation between the national chairman and the presidency or the campaign, it hasn't augured well for the party. You know, back to Alajete, Kufuor's era and all of that. So I think this has to be managed very, very carefully. I understand if they say he's the chairman of the advisory committee, that's okay. But if you want to extend it to the campaign, that would have been a bit weird. But now you've...
Yeah, I mean, but as but still, there's a potential conflict there. This is an advisory campaign committee that he chairs, right? So they must advise, and it's an advice. So whoever the presidential candidate is can decide to rubbish it.
Yes.
That has the potential still to sow division.
Yes, that is why I'm saying that this is a relationship that really needs to be managed carefully.
Yeah.
Because anytime you look at a political party that is successful, there is a certain agreement, or at least there is no, rivalry between the party and then the government or the presidency or the campaign. So the national chairman needs to be a strong person. He needs to be somebody of wisdom, of experience, who is well-mannered, well-tempered, but then able to crack the whip and hold himself up, to put the party together. But at the same time, there should be a good relationship with, if they're in government, with the presidency, and if they're out of government, with the campaign as well. Yep. And that is why it is important that even presidential candidates also make sure that they are a part of the party executive process, so that whoever becomes chairman does not cause problems for them. Because if you look at the Republican National Convention, the Democratic National Convention sometimes runs previews would fight with Donald Trump. And say, no, the president is doing this. This is not what the Republican...
And it's interesting, and Luis, I'll bring you in. I know you have your own comment, but this is also interesting for the NPP on the back of the decisions they've made tonight. In January, when they elect their flag bearer, that flag bearer will now somehow superintend over the process of the election of the national executives, including general secretary and national chairman. And because for the first time, they've reversed the process, he will obviously have his favorites in whoever emerges as the likely contenders for the general secretary and chairman. And knowing this clause, he would want somebody there that he can work with. Doesn't that also then lay the foundations for accusations that whoever the flag bearer is at the end of January then is seeking to control the process towards election of it, and that in itself can generate further division towards 2028.
It always will, and you know that the likes of Osechim and Sabonsu has always been an advocate of, get a flag bearer, get him to get his, people that he can work with. But those who are against that have said, no, a flag bearer should be able to work with everybody. But of course, if you're a flag bearer also, with this current provision, you would want to influence, the elections. And you made the point about Akufo-Addo, and I have said, look, you may not like his governance, you can't take away his politics. I think that he's actually he's the best politician we've seen in the Fourth Republic. He held the NPP for 16 years, one man.
Yeah.
And you can't take that away from him. So the NPP may have learned their lessons. But the truth is, look, talking about strong chairman. In 1992, B.J. Darocha was the chairman of the NPP.
Very strong.
I mean, if you're a Dubai, BJ Darocha, in 1995, Peter Alajete, 1998, Samuel Odoi Sykes, in 2001, Haruna Eseku, who was minister under Buzia when Kufuor was deputy minister. So the four names that I've mentioned, these were people that, even if you were president and you would know that, Charlie, these are people with control. And these are people who understood what they were about. So they knew that, okay, I am the leader of the party and I take this decision. I think that the NPP needs a strong chairman. We've made that point, so I'm not going to go into it again. But whatever the situation is, if you are whoever wins the NPP's primary in January, you want to influence who wins the general secretary, the national chairman. It's as simple as that.
Another key decision that was made today, and for many, we say, man, this is no-brainer. They should have done it earlier. They've now written into a constitution, Musa Dankwa, that if you are a minister or hold any position in government and you want to run for president, you must now resign. It's mandatory, at least 24 months before the elections. Smart move.
I think so. It will enable the government to stay focused. People will not be distracted by running their own campaign and also trying to run their ministries. But it will come with some disadvantage because once you are in government, you are a minister, there are certain things that you are able to access and that helps you in running your campaign. But I mean, we can't let them do private jobs alongside the ministerial position. So you must make a decision. And that decision, you probably have to think about it. If you don't have a chance, you probably will not sacrifice your ministerial position for that. So, and this is where data will help you. I mean, you don't go anywhere you know that it's not going to work. You don't lose your job and then go and get 3%.
Yeah. I mean, they've taken the decision from their hands now. If you're an individual, you are aspiring. And this is not just for ministers. Across the board, if you're holding any government position, you 24 months, at least you must resign. If you cross into 24 months, then you're locked in. Forget about your ambition because then you're going to serve to the end. That is definitely a smart move, isn't it? I mean, why hasn't anybody done it before now? You're thinking?
It's a no-brainer. I remember, sitting back and looking at it and saying it is practically and humanly impossible to hold a major government position or any government position and then be running for president at the same time. Running for president, if you work in campaign politics literature, is a full-time job. You cannot hold a national position, try to run the country, and even the fissure or the contestation between at what point are you using state resources and at what point are you using
line becomes very blurred.
That line becomes very, very blurred. And then the nation suffers. There's a trade ministry, there's an agricultural ministry, we have a country to govern, we have a nation to work out, and then you are running for president at the same time. I think this is a no-brainer, and I was like, yes, of course, why not? I mean, that's just common sense.
Yeah, Winston, let me add to that because we're out of time. There's another provision that has not also been adopted, which also says that they now made it, they've prohibited the situation where an individual can hold a government position and a party position at the same time. So, Samuel Oku's scenario, for example, played out where he was he was appointed the boss of NLA, but also held some position. It's happened across both parties, really.
Yeah.
NPP have written it into their constitution tonight that you can't do that. If you're holding a party position and you're appointed into government, you have to immediately resign your position in the party and go and focus on managing the affairs of your office in government. Smart move too.
It's smart. I mean, what has happened in the past is that many of these persons do not contest again, but they do not resign. And so you realize that the moment they are appointed, their deputies take center stage and then eventually would seek election or another person would seek election. So I remember when Major Karit Kwashigan was appointed as health minister in 2001. He was then national organizer of the NPP. He didn't contest again. You've talked about, when Otiko Afisa-Jaba was appointed as a women, gender, children and social protection minister, she didn't show up again. But she didn't resign from her position. And so I think that it's a smart way of going about it. The bit about the ministers, I just make this point, it's also very smart, okay? Because part of the problem that political parties have faced is ministers wanting to be presidential candidates. And what they do is that a lot of the corruption stems from that, because they're looking for money. And once they're looking for money, they start by, some may start by forcing the agencies under them to actually finance their campaign.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
Yeah.
So if you think you want to be president, and you know, the NPP has actually signed on, and actually adopted an amendment that says that when they're in government, they have at least 18 months. So no matter how you look at it, so if that, I mean,
That they must elect their
elect the flag bearer 18 months before
yes.
the main election. So let's do the calculation. So 18 months means that by now, if you were a minister, you should have resigned.
Yep.
Why accept it? You dare not accept it. So if, say, the NPP was in power, what you would expect is that by June of the 3 years before the elections, in June, you should be resigning. It's better you don't even accept the position. So what the party is saying is that if you know you have presidential ambitions, okay, the moment you plan that you want to contest, you don't even accept ministerial appointments. You don't accept any appointment within government. Go and concentrate on your elections. And I think it's a very smart move.
Okay, and just before we wrap up, the final one, their decision now to make the communications director position an elected one. The NPP, the NDC sort of taking the lead in that already with the election of Sami Jamefi, at the time National Communications Officer. Again, what do you make of that? Let me ask the communications professor. Yes, let me ask the communications professor. So now it's going to be elected position. They've always appointed that slot. Remember they used to have this conflict. The time when you had the former deputy National Petroleum Authority boss, who was a communications director for the NPP, there was some friction. There was some friction between himself and all that, but they've now made that position. The deputy position will still be appointed, but the communications director's job is going to be elected.
Yes, this is one of those that I potentially may disagree with, because I think that communication is a very specialized area. I think it's a very professional area where you need a certain level of expertise to communicate, especially when it comes to political communication. The fact that you can shout, the fact that you can insult, the fact that you can raise your voice and do whatever, be boisterous, is not equivalent to good communication. And so I've always tilted towards looking for people of expertise, people who are grounded in political communication, people who have that wherewithal to do that, because this is a very scientific field. And the way that you communicate has, it is inextricably connected to the fortunes of your party. If it so happens that the person who is elected is great at that professional communication, that's okay. And it could happen that way, but it could also happen that it could be a reflection of a certain basic understanding of what politics is, and those the political fist fights and all of that, and that the person might end up rather being a disadvantage or might actually undercut the fortunes of their political party.
Because the person must also now design and implement communication strategy for the party.
Yes, absolutely. And that's scientific, right? So you might actually end up, so much so that there are some times that you find some communicate, when they open their mouth, they rather reduce the votes of their party, and all that. So I don't know about this, but I don't know. The only thing I can think about is that maybe they want somebody who reflects their language, who speaks their values, who talks for them and all of that, but that is not all that there is to professional political.
I agree with him, and I think it's because they've taken the science out of the communication. They think it's the usual traditional communicating way and be able to arouse the crowd and speak. But look, communication person must be an expert who understands data, who will use the data to kind of strategize how to get to certain messages. It's not about who is popular. No, because when you go through election, you can't deliver somebody who is popular, famous. But that person could be bankrupt in ideas when it comes to communication strategy. And that, I think, could backfire.
It's worked for the NDC. Why not for the NPP?
No, it may be by chance. It may be by chance.
You look, Musa, Prof.
Yes, sir.
In the NPP, check their communication directors. One of the best, Nana Komian.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah, we all agree to that.
We all know Nana Komian exactly. He is a very good communicator. He understands the field. He would design strategies that would work. But you see, in our politics, the role of the communications director, most of the time, is not one who's designing policies to actually champion a lot of things. If you check the NPP's appointments of communication directors, they've actually, right from the constituency to, they look at the person who goes on radio the most.
Yeah, but it should not be the case.
I'm coming. Yeah. I'm coming. It should not be the case. But sometimes, because that has been the case, how about you now allow the people to decide, this is the person I want. So that person now would go and tell the people why he thinks or she thinks he or she should make communications director. He should go and tell them, this is what I intend to do. There's also another thing. You see, people have actually, and I'll say this, people have actually acted in a certain way because there's some level of accountability. In the past, the director of communications actually thinks you're appointed. So he reports to whoever appointed him and he thinks that's the end of it. The parties realize that now that they've gone into a position, some of the things they should begin to do is actually get people to be accountable to the very people who elected them. So now, and we've seen it, I'll end on this note. Look, the NDC communications wing is always grateful to Sami Jemfi because a lot of them have gotten certain positions within government. The NPP, and Evans, I passed by the Legon University of Ghana Stadium. Everywhere you pass, you hear, sadly, you hear, oh, when they were in government, that's what the people were saying. The lessons they have learned is that allow the people to make the choices. Let them make the choices. Once they make the choices, they feel that, okay, we have put these people there, and so they are going to serve our interests. The party is beginning to learn a thing or two. Now that they are in opposition, so be it.
Winston, thank you very much. You've also been listening to Musa Dankwa. He is the head of the Global Info Analytics, and Professor H.C. Kanku. You know him, regular on the show, Associate Professor, University of Media Arts and Communication. He's also the acting dean of the Faculty of Journalism and Media Studies. My name is Evans Mensah. This has been your election headquarters.